The silence of space was broken by an unexpected sound. It was faint at first, barely audible, but it grew louder with each passing second. Commander Zorak sat at the command desk aboard the Zorethian flagship, staring out at the stars. His crew was focused on their tasks, each of them preparing for another routine mission in the vast unknown. But today was different. Today, something was wrong. Zorak could feel it. The air felt thick with tension, a strange hum in the atmosphere. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the sensor readings, and his fingers slowly hovered over the console. There it was again, a soft, rhythmic thumping sound. At first, he thought it was just a glitch in the system, but then he realized something that sent a chill down his spine. The sound was coming from beneath the surface of the planet they were orbiting. "Captain," Zorak called to the officer beside him. "What's that sound? Is it coming from the planet?" The officer turned pale, his eyes wide with confusion. "Sir, we're detecting something. Something deep beneath the surface. The readings, they're inconsistent. It doesn't match any known patterns." Zorak's mind raced. The planet they were observing had been thought to be uninhabited for millennia. For centuries, it had been a quiet, forgotten world in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Yet, here it was, an anomaly in the calm, a strange sound coming from its depths. Was it a natural occurrence, or something else? "I want every sensor active. Track that signal," Zorak ordered, his voice firm. The crew worked quickly, scanning the planet for any signs of life or movement. But as the sound continued, growing louder and clearer, it became obvious that it wasn't just a natural phenomenon. "It's not just noise," the officer said, a note of urgency in his voice. "There's a pattern to it. It's structured, like a message." Zorak stood up from his seat, his heart racing. If this was a message, it could only mean one thing. Someone, or something, had been waiting for them. The question was who, and why had it been silent for so long? "Prepare a landing party," Zorak commanded. "We're going down. I want to see where this signal is coming from. It's time to uncover what's hidden beneath this world." Minutes later, Zorak and a small group of his most trusted officers boarded a shuttle, preparing to descend to the planet's surface. The journey through the planet's atmosphere was smooth, but the tension was palpable. No one spoke a word. Everyone aboard the shuttle felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. As they neared the ground, the shuttle's sensors began to pick up something unusual. It wasn't just the signal that had been detected earlier. It was the faintest trace of energy readings, almost like dormant machinery coming to life. Zorak's mind raced. "We've found something," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Something that's been buried for centuries." The shuttle touched down softly on the planet's surface. The ground was barren, covered in dust and rock. There were no signs of life, no plants, no animals, just endless stretches of desolate terrain. Yet deep within the ground, something was stirring. "Stay alert," Zorak ordered as the hatch of the shuttle opened. The group stepped out into the cold, dry air, their boots crunching on the cracked surface of the planet. The team moved forward, following the signal. Each step brought them closer to the source, but the sense of danger was growing stronger with every moment. After what felt like hours, they finally arrived at a massive structure, half buried beneath the soil. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. It had the shape of a long, sleek ship, its surface smooth and metallic, yet covered in strange symbols and markings. The ship appeared ancient, as though it had been forgotten for millennia. But it was unmistakably a warship, a powerful, advanced vessel. "This is it," Zorak whispered, staring at the ship in disbelief. "This is what's been hidden." As they approached the ship, Zorak felt a deep unease wash over him. There was something almost alive about it, as though the ship itself was waiting. The energy readings had become stronger now, pulsing like a heartbeat. The ship wasn't just a relic, it was waking up. Zorak turned to his team. "Get to work. I want every system we have focused on this ship. Let's see what it's hiding." The team quickly began scanning the ship, using their advanced technology to try and unlock its secrets. But the more they worked, the more the ship seemed to resist. It was as if the vessel itself didn't want to be disturbed. The air grew thick with tension. Then, without warning, a loud mechanical sound echoed through the area. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the ship's surface began to glow with an eerie blue light. Zorek's heart skipped a beat as he realized what was happening. "The ship's powering up," one of his officers shouted. "It's coming online." Zorek's mind raced. What had they just uncovered? And why had this ship been hidden for so long? There was no doubt in his mind now. This was no ordinary discovery. The warship was ancient, and it had been waiting for something. But what? The pulsing light from the ship grew brighter, and a deep hum filled the air. It was as if the entire planet was reacting to the ship's awakening. Zorek could feel the power in the air, and his instinct told him that they had just uncovered something much bigger than they had ever anticipated. Suddenly, the ground beneath them rumbled once again. The ship's engines roared to life, and the air was filled with the sounds of ancient technology coming back to life. Zorek's mind was racing as he realized the gravity of the situation. "Commander," one of the officers said, his voice shaking. "What do we do now?" Zorek paused for a moment, staring at the ship. It had been hidden for 500,000 years, and now it was waking up. Whatever this ship was, it was not just a relic. It was a weapon, one that had the power to change everything. "We wait," Zorek said, his voice steady despite the unease coursing through him. "We see what this ship has to tell us." The glowing light from the warship became brighter, filling the dark, barren landscape with an eerie blue glow. Zorek's heart pounded in his chest as the ground beneath his boots trembled. The ship, which had been silent and dormant for centuries, was now coming to life. The air was thick with energy, as if the planet itself was reacting to the awakening of this ancient machine. "Commander, what should we do?" One of Zorek's officers yelled, his voice trembling with a mix of awe and fear. His eyes were fixed on the warship as its systems powered up, sending waves of energy through the atmosphere. Zorek took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. He had to make a decision fast. The ship was clearly no ordinary vessel. It was far beyond anything the Zorathians had ever seen. The unknown technology pulsing within it could be either their greatest asset or their biggest threat. "We need to proceed carefully," Zorek ordered, his voice firm, despite the fear that gnawed at him. "Keep your distance, but remain ready. We don't know what this ship is capable of, but we're not leaving until we understand it." The team spread out, each of them keeping a cautious distance from the ship as its engines roared to life. The ship's surface began to ripple, like a surface of water disturbed by a drop of rain. Strange symbols, ancient and alien, appeared to shimmer across its hull, glowing in the same blue light that now bathed the landscape. Zorek could feel the power of the warship in his very bones. The entire planet seemed to be reacting to it. The hum of the ship's energy was so intense that it seemed to reverberate through the air itself. "We need to access the ship's systems," Zorek said. "There must be something, anything, that can explain what's happening." The team quickly set up their equipment, attempting to interface with the ship's exterior. But no matter what they tried, they couldn't penetrate its defenses. The ship was too advanced, its technology far beyond anything they had ever encountered. "Commander, it's not responding to our signals," one of the officers said, frustration evident in his voice. "The ship seems to be rejecting us. It's like it's trying to keep us out." Zorek frowned, his mind racing. The ship's reaction made him uneasy. The warship was alive in a way that no technology should be. It wasn't just a machine. It felt like something more, a sentient being, perhaps, or something with a mind of its own. "Is there any way to manually access its core?" Zorek asked. "Yes," another officer answered, pointing to a set of large, glowing panels on the ship's surface. "But we would have to get closer, and the energy output is increasing. We may not be able to handle it much longer." Zorek didn't hesitate. He knew they couldn't afford to wait any longer. Whatever secrets the warship held, they needed to unlock them now, before the ship powered up completely. "Get closer," Zorak commanded. "I'll lead the way. Stay focused, and keep your shields up." The team moved forward cautiously, stepping closer to the glowing panels on the ship. Each step felt like they were drawing nearer to the heart of a sleeping giant. The energy coming from the ship made the air feel thick, heavy, almost as though they were walking into an invisible force field. Zorak could hear the faint hum of the ship's systems as he approached the panels. His fingers brushed against the glowing surface, and instantly, the ship seemed to react. The panels shifted, like they were opening up, revealing intricate alien symbols that no one could decipher. Before anyone could speak, a sudden rush of energy shot from the ship, knocking Zorak and his team back. They scrambled to their feet, barely managing to keep their balance as the ship's power surged. "Commander, we need to get out of here," one of the officers shouted, his face pale. "We're too close. The ship's power is reaching dangerous levels." Zorak looked up, his mind racing. The ship's systems were coming online faster than he had anticipated, and if they didn't figure out how to control it soon, they might be caught in the chaos. Just as he was about to order a retreat, the glowing panels on the ship's hull began to change. The symbols on the surface shifted and rearranged, forming what seemed like a readable sequence. Zorak's eyes widened. It was a message. He quickly moved closer, scanning the symbols. They seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, and as they rearranged, a deep mechanical voice echoed from the ship's interior, vibrating through the ground beneath them. "Awakening sequence initiated. Earth War Fleet ready." The words echoed in Zorak's mind. Earth War Fleet. This wasn't just any ship. It was part of something much larger, a network of ancient war machines that had been dormant for 500,000 years. And now, they were awakening. "Did you hear that?" Zorak asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "This ship is part of a fleet from Earth. But how could this be?" Earth was lost. Humanity was gone. The team stood frozen, absorbing the shock of what they had just heard. The warship wasn't just a forgotten relic. It was a piece of a larger story, a story that linked Earth and its forgotten history to the stars. But who had left this fleet behind? And why? "Commander, we're not alone," one officer said, his voice shaking with fear. "There's more. This ship, it's not the only one." Zorak turned sharply, his mind racing. He felt as though they had stumbled upon something that had been waiting for them, something much bigger than a simple discovery. The warship was part of a hidden network, and it was waking up, just as humanity had vanished from the face of Earth. "We need to learn more," Zorak said, his voice full of resolve. "This is just the beginning. There's a reason this ship, and this fleet, has been hidden for so long. We need to find out what it means." The ship's hum grew louder, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to shake more violently. Zorak knew that they had uncovered something dangerous, but they were too far in now to turn back. The warship was awake, and so was Earth's forgotten power. The blue glow from the warship continued to pulse, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Zorak's mind raced with the implications of what they had just discovered. Earth? A war fleet? How could it be? The humans, who had once inhabited this planet, had vanished long before the Zorathians had even begun their journey into the stars. Zorak stood frozen for a moment, the words still echoing in his mind. Earth War Fleet. Ready. It was as if the ship had been waiting for something. Waiting for them. "Commander," one of his officers, Lieutenant Kira, called out, pulling Zorak from his thoughts. "We need to move quickly. We don't know what kind of security measures this ship has. We could trigger something dangerous." Zorak nodded slowly, his mind still focused on the mystery they had uncovered. "You're right, Kira. But we can't leave now. Not after what we found. This ship, it holds the key to something huge. We need to figure out what it is before we make any moves." He motioned to the rest of the team. "Set up a perimeter. Keep your distance, but be ready. We don't know how this ship will react, and we can't afford to take any risks." As the officers moved to secure the area, Zorak approached the warship again. The surface of the ship now seemed even more alive, almost pulsing with an energy that felt both powerful and dangerous. It was as if the ship itself was sentient, aware of their presence, and watching them. The air was thick with tension. Zorak could feel the weight of something unseen pressing down on him. The warship was ancient, yet it had the power to awaken and respond to their presence. But why? What was its purpose? And where were the other ships in this so-called fleet? Zorak stepped closer, cautiously placing his hand on the glowing surface. As his fingers made contact, the ship seemed to respond. The symbols on the surface shifted once again, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. Slowly, a large section of the ship's hull began to open, revealing a narrow passageway leading into the heart of the vessel. The team gathered around, staring at the opening. No one spoke. It was as if they were all afraid that the ship might somehow hear them, or worse, react to their presence in an unexpected way. "Stay alert," Zorak ordered quietly. "We're going in." One by one, the team stepped into the dark passageway, their footsteps echoing as they descended into the ship's interior. The air inside was cold and still, and the only sound was the faint hum of the warship's systems. It was a strange, unsettling silence. The passageway led them deeper into the ship, winding and twisting like the inside of some ancient, forgotten structure. The walls were smooth and metallic, covered in more of the glowing symbols that seemed to pulse and shift with every step they took. "We need to be careful," Lieutenant Kira whispered, her voice barely audible. "There could be traps or defense systems in place." Zorak nodded. He was more aware than anyone of the potential dangers. The ship had been hidden for millennia. No one knew what kind of advanced technology it might still possess, or what kinds of defenses it could have. The team moved cautiously, their weapons drawn, ready for anything. As they walked deeper into the ship, the faint humming sound grew louder. It was as though the ship was alive, its machinery slowly waking up after a long sleep. Then they reached a large chamber, much larger than any of the other rooms they had passed. The walls were lined with enormous consoles, covered in strange, glowing panels. At the center of the room was what appeared to be a massive control deck, a strange, circular platform surrounded by intricate alien technology. Zorak's breath caught in his throat. This was it, the heart of the ship, the control center. He approached the platform slowly, his eyes scanning the glowing symbols on the walls. It was clear that the ship's systems were still functioning, but it was also clear that much of the technology was beyond their understanding. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet vibrated. The ship seemed to come alive even more, the low hum intensifying. It was as if the ship was reacting to their presence, sensing them as intruders in its domain. Zorak held up a hand to signal the team to stop. "Hold your positions. Let's see what happens." The vibration continued for a few moments, and then, without warning, the entire room seemed to shift. A series of panels on the floor slid open, revealing what appeared to be a holographic display. The glowing light from the display illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. A figure appeared on the display. It was a human, a man, dressed in what looked like military armor. His face was stern, his expression unreadable, but there was a sense of authority in his eyes. He looked like someone who had been in command of something important. The figure's mouth moved, but no sound came from the display. Instead, a series of symbols began to appear next to him, translating his words into the team's language. "This is Commander Elias of the Earth Fleet," the holographic figure said. "If you are seeing this message, it means that the fleet has been reactivated. The warships are now under your command. Use them wisely." Zorak's heart raced. This wasn't just a warning. It was a command. The warships, the fleet, had been waiting for someone to activate them. And now, it was clear that the Zorathians had unwittingly answered that call. "You must understand, The hologram continued. The war fleet was created to protect Earth from destruction. But the war is over. The enemy is no longer a threat. But the fleet remains, dormant. If you have awakened it, you are the new guardians of its power. The message ended abruptly, and the hologram flickered out. Zorak stood frozen, staring at the now dark display. His mind struggled to process what he had just seen. The Earth fleet, the warships, they were not just relics. They were active, waiting to be used again. And now, they were his responsibility. He turned to his team, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and fear. This is bigger than we imagined. We've unlocked something that no one was meant to find. This fleet, this power, it's not just a weapon. It's a legacy. The team stood in stunned silence. They had come to explore a forgotten world, but what they had found was a hidden history, one that could change the course of the galaxy. And as Zorak looked around at the warship's massive control deck, he knew one thing for sure. They were no longer just explorers. They were now the guardians of an ancient power. Zorak's hands trembled as he stepped back from the glowing control panel. The hologram of Commander Elias had vanished, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. The weight of what he had just learned hung heavy in the air. The Earth war fleet, once dormant for thousands of years, had been reawakened. And now, the Zorathians were the ones in control of its power. Zorak turned to his team, his mind racing with questions. How had the fleet been hidden for so long? Why had the humans left these ships behind? And most importantly, what was their next move? This changes everything, Lieutenant Kira said quietly, her voice filled with awe. We have control of a fleet that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Zorak nodded slowly, his mind still processing the enormity of the situation. We need to figure out how to use this power carefully. The fleet was designed for protection, but who knows what it's capable of now? We're not the only ones out here, and if others find out about this... He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the room understood the danger. The warships were powerful, far beyond anything the Zorathians had ever seen. If they fell into the wrong hands, the consequences could be catastrophic. Let's get to work, Zorak said, his voice steady. We'll need to learn everything we can about these ships and the fleet. First, we need to find out where the other warships are and how to bring them online. The team moved quickly to set up their equipment, scanning the ship's systems for any clues about the other vessels in the fleet. The ship's internal network was vast, stretching across hundreds of systems and hidden locations. It was clear that this was no ordinary warship. It was the heart of something much larger, something far more complex. As the team worked, Zorak's mind kept returning to the message. The war is over, the hologram had said. The enemy is no longer a threat. If that was true, why had the fleet been left to lie dormant for so long? And who were the enemies they had been protecting Earth from? There's something odd here, Lieutenant Kira said, breaking Zorak's thoughts. I'm detecting something unusual in the fleet's central command. There's a map, a star chart. It shows several locations, but one of them is marked with a warning. It's a planet, far out in the outer rim. The coordinates match an ancient site, one that's been lost to history. Zorak frowned. A lost site. What could it be? Why would the fleet's command system be pointing to it now? Show me, Zorak said, moving over to Kira's station. On the screen, a holographic map of the galaxy appeared. Several points were marked, each one representing a different warship in the fleet. But one location stood out. It was deep in uncharted space, a place where no known species had ever traveled. And it was marked with a warning. Site of first command. Danger. Zorak stared at the screen, his heart pounding. The warning was clear. This place was important. But why? And why had it been hidden for so long? We need to investigate, Zorak said after a long silence. If the fleet's command system is pointing to this location, then it's not a coincidence. We need to find out what's there. We might uncover more answers about the fleet. and about Earth's history. The team agreed. It wasn't just curiosity that drove them. It was the feeling that something important was hidden on that distant planet, something that could change everything they thought they knew about the fleet and about humanity's place in the galaxy. The team began preparing for the journey, gathering their equipment, and plotting the course. It would take them days to reach the outer rim, but Zorak wasn't concerned with the time. What mattered was the truth they were about to uncover. As they prepared to leave the warship, Zorak couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much larger than they could possibly imagine. The fleet's power was growing stronger with each passing hour, and yet they had no idea what would happen when they reached the site. Zorak glanced back at the warship's control room. The blue light still pulsed in the distance, a constant reminder of the fleet's awakening power. It was a silent guardian, watching over the galaxy, waiting for something, or someone, to give it a purpose. "Commander," Lieutenant Kira said, pulling him from his thoughts, "we've prepared everything. We're ready to depart." Zorak nodded, turning to face the rest of the team. "Let's move out." The journey to the outer rim was long and treacherous. The crew encountered numerous obstacles as they traveled through deep space, but nothing could prepare them for what awaited them at their destination. The planet they were headed toward was a dark, desolate world, its surface covered in jagged mountains and endless valleys. It looked like a place that had been forgotten by time itself. As they neared the planet, the warship's sensors picked up an unusual energy signature coming from the surface. It was faint but steady, like a pulse, a rhythm that seemed to match the warship's own power systems. "Bring us in closer," Zorak ordered. "I want to see what's causing this." The ship descended through the atmosphere, its hull glowing with energy as they passed through thick clouds. Below, the landscape was barren, with no signs of life. It was a place of quiet stillness, almost as though it had been waiting for them to arrive. The ship landed with a soft thud, its engines powering down as the crew gathered their gear. They were about to step onto a planet that had been forgotten by the galaxy, but there was no time to waste. They had a mission to complete. "Stay alert," Zorak warned as he led the team out of the ship and onto the rocky ground. "Whatever is here, it's important. We don't know what we'll find." They moved forward, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they climbed over a rocky ridge, the team came upon an ancient structure, large, stone buildings that had been carved into the side of the mountain. It was a place of power, a place that had been untouched by time. And in the center of it all, a large stone door stood open, inviting them to enter. A faint light glowed from within, beckoning them forward. "This is it," Zorak said, his voice low. "This is the site of First Command." They stepped inside, ready to face whatever lay ahead. What secrets would they uncover in this ancient place? What had the humans left behind? Zorak didn't know, but he was about to find out. The air was cold and thin as Zorak and his team stepped onto the rocky surface of the forgotten planet. Their boots crunched against the dry ground, the sound echoing in the eerie silence of the desolate landscape. The planet seemed lifeless, as if it had been untouched for centuries. The ancient structure in front of them loomed like a forgotten monument, a silent sentinel from a time long past. Zorak's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. They had come to this place seeking answers, but as they approached the dark doorway, the weight of the unknown settled over him. What secrets lay inside the stone walls? What had the humans left behind? And why had they hidden it here on this forsaken world? "Stay sharp," Zorak ordered, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We don't know what we're walking into. Whatever this place is, it's been hidden for a reason." The team moved cautiously, their weapons drawn, eyes scanning the surroundings. The doorway to the ancient structure was tall and wide, its surface etched with intricate symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. As they stepped inside, the temperature dropped even further, and the air grew thick with the smell of ancient stone and dust. Inside, the structure was vast, far larger than they had anticipated. The walls were made of smooth, polished stone, and the ceiling stretched high above them, disappearing into shadow. The light from their helmets barely illuminated the space around them, but there was enough to see the enormous pillars that lined the interior. At the far end of the room, a large stone platform stood, surrounded by glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "This place is massive," Lieutenant Kira whispered, her voice reverberating off the walls. "But why was it left here? What purpose did it serve?" Zorak didn't answer right away. He was too focused on the platform at the far end of the room. There was something about it, something that drew him in. It was as if the structure itself was calling to him. "Let's approach slowly," Zorak said, his voice low. "We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The team moved forward cautiously, their steps echoing through the massive chamber. As they reached the platform, Zorak could feel the air grow even colder, and a strange energy seemed to radiate from the stone. The symbols around the platform glowed brighter, casting an eerie light across the room. At the center of the platform, a large stone pedestal stood, its surface covered in more glowing symbols. The pedestal seemed to be the focal point of the room, as if it were the heart of the entire structure. Zorak's eyes narrowed as he approached the pedestal. There was something about it that felt important, something that had been waiting for them. He reached out slowly, placing his hand on the pedestal. As his fingers made contact with the cold stone, a deep hum filled the room. The symbols around the pedestal shifted and rearranged themselves, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. The entire structure seemed to come alive, its ancient systems awakening after centuries of silence. Zorak's heart raced as a series of holographic images began to flicker to life in front of him. They were images of Earth, images of humanity's rise and fall, their wars and their victories. But they weren't just any images. They were memories, memories of a time long forgotten. A voice, low and mechanical, began to speak, its words echoing in the chamber. "Welcome, guardians of the fleet. You have come seeking knowledge, and you shall receive it." The team stood frozen, staring at the holographic display as the voice continued. The Earth fleet was created to defend the planet from an ancient enemy, an enemy that no longer exists. But the fleet, it was never meant to be used for war again. Its purpose was to protect, to preserve. The voice paused, and the holograms flickered. The images shifted, showing a vast fleet of ships, massive warships, their weapons primed and ready, their engines humming with power. "But the fleet has a darker purpose," the voice continued. "A purpose that has been hidden from all who have come before you. The fleet was not only created to protect Earth, it was created to keep the enemy contained. And the enemy is still out there." Zorak's blood ran cold. The implications of the message were clear. The fleet was not just a weapon. It was a prison, holding something dangerous, something that had been kept in check for millennia, but was now at risk of being released. The holograms flickered again, showing a map of distant stars, each marked with a symbol of warning. Zorak could see the locations of the other warships in the fleet, each one connected by an invisible thread, as if they were guarding something far greater than Earth. "There is one last task for you," the voice said, its tone growing darker. "You must ensure that the enemy remains locked away. The fleet's power is vast, but it must be used wisely. If the enemy is freed, it will destroy everything." The voice fell silent, and the holograms vanished, leaving the room in complete darkness. Zorak stood still, his mind reeling from the message. The enemy. What was it? Who were they? And how had humanity's fleet kept them contained all this time? He looked around at his team, all of them equally stunned by the revelation. They had come here seeking answers, but they had uncovered something far more dangerous than they had imagined. "What now?" Lieutenant Kira asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What do we do?" Zorak took a deep breath, his mind racing. They had only just begun to understand the true purpose of the fleet. They had unlocked a secret that had been hidden for millennia. And now they had a responsibility. one far greater than they could have ever imagined. "We need to find the enemy," Zorak said, his voice filled with determination. "And we need to stop it before it's too late." As the team gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the ancient structure, Zorak couldn't shake the feeling that they were only just beginning to scratch the surface of a mystery that could change the fate of the galaxy. Zorak stood at the entrance of the ancient structure, staring out at the barren landscape. His mind raced as he tried to process the terrifying revelation. The fleet, once thought to be humanity's greatest weapon, was not just a defense force, it was a prison. A prison that had been holding something far more dangerous than anything they had ever faced. Something that could destroy the entire galaxy. "Commander," Lieutenant Kira's voice broke through his thoughts. "We need to move quickly. Whatever this enemy is, it's still out there. We can't risk waiting any longer." Zorak nodded, his gaze shifting to the sky above. The cold, silent air of the planet seemed to press down on him, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The enemy, the one that the fleet had been designed to contain. What kind of threat could it pose? And why had the humans gone to such lengths to keep it hidden? "Let's get back to the ship," Zorak said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We need to figure out our next move." The team quickly gathered their equipment and made their way back to the warship. The journey across the rocky terrain was quiet, each member lost in their own thoughts. Zorak's mind kept returning to the holographic message. The enemy is still out there. But who, or what, was this enemy? And where had they been hiding all this time? As they boarded the ship and made their way to the command deck, Zorak looked out at the stars. The map of the fleet was still on the display, showing the positions of the other warships. Each one was positioned at key locations across the galaxy, each one guarding something important. But what could it be? What was the true threat that the fleet had been holding back? "Commander," Lieutenant Kira said, interrupting his thoughts. "We've analyzed the data from the map. There's one warship that stands out. It's the most powerful ship in the fleet, and it's stationed at a location near the galactic core." Zorak turned to face her, his heart skipping a beat. The galactic core, the heart of the galaxy. It was the most dangerous place in the universe, a place filled with black holes, supernova, and unstable regions of space. Why would the fleet's most powerful ship be stationed there? "Show me," Zorak said, his voice calm but filled with urgency. Kira tapped a few keys on the console, and the map zoomed in on the galactic core. At its center, a single point was marked with a bright red symbol, warning of an unknown danger. The ship stationed there was marked as Alpha Class, unknown purpose. The name alone sent chills down Zorak's spine. An Alpha Class warship was the pinnacle of Earth's technological advancements, built for one purpose: to neutralize the greatest threats. But why was it stationed so close to the core, and why had it been marked as unknown? "This doesn't make sense," Zorak murmured. "What could be so dangerous that it requires the most powerful warship in the fleet to guard it? And why has it been kept a secret all this time?" "Maybe the answer lies within the ship itself," Lieutenant Kira suggested. "If we can reach it, we might find out what the fleet was truly protecting." Zorak knew she was right. The fleet had been built to defend against a threat that had been kept hidden for millennia. But now, the truth was becoming clear. The threat wasn't just a weapon or a force. It was something that had been locked away in the deepest, darkest corners of the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to strike. "We're heading to the galactic core," Zorak said, his voice firm. "Prepare the ship for immediate departure. We have to find out what's really going on." The crew quickly began their preparations, but Zorak couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far greater than they could possibly understand. As they made their way toward the core, the ship's engines hummed to life, and the stars outside the window blurred into streaks of light. The journey to the galactic core would take days, but Zorak felt the weight of the mission heavy on his shoulders. What if the fleet's enemy was already awake? What if it was already on the move? Every moment counted. "We should be ready for anything," Zorak said, pacing the deck. "The moment we arrive, we'll need to be prepared for a confrontation. Whatever this enemy is, it's been waiting for thousands of years. It's likely more powerful than anything we've ever faced." Lieutenant Kira nodded, her eyes focused. "We'll be ready, Commander." As the ship continued its journey through the void of space, Zorak couldn't help but think about the enemies they had faced in the past. The Zorethians had fought many battles against hostile species, pirates, and other threats. But this was different. This wasn't a battle over resources or power. This was something far darker, something ancient. The ship's sensors beeped, pulling Zorak from his thoughts. "Commander, we're approaching the galactic core. Sensors are picking up strange readings. There's something out there, something we can't identify." Zorak's heart skipped a beat. They had arrived. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Keep your eyes on the sensors. We don't know what we're dealing with here." As the ship entered the outskirts of the galactic core, the vastness of space seemed to open up before them. The core was a chaotic region of stars and black holes, a place where the laws of physics often seemed to break down. It was a place of danger, a place that even the most powerful warships avoided. But this was where the most dangerous ship in the fleet had been stationed. And now, they were here, ready to uncover the truth. The ship's sensors suddenly spiked, and the crew braced themselves for whatever was to come. In the distance, a massive shadow loomed, a ship, unlike any they had ever seen. It was huge, its hull covered in strange symbols, and it seemed to be alive, pulsing with energy. It was like something from another time. "That's the Alpha-class ship," Zorak said, his voice tight. "We've found it." But as they got closer, a deep, haunting sound filled the ship. It was a low, rumbling noise that seemed to come from the very heart of the galactic core. It was a warning, one that chilled Zorak to his core. The enemy was awake, and it was waiting for them. The tension aboard the ship was palpable as Zorak stared at the massive shadow in the distance. The Alpha-class warship, an ancient relic that had been guarding the heart of the galaxy for millennia, loomed before them. Its strange symbols pulsed with an eerie, unearthly glow, casting long shadows across the dark expanse of space. The ship was alive with energy, its surface almost vibrating with an unknown power. It was as if it had been waiting for them all this time. "Commander, what is that?" Lieutenant Kira asked, her voice filled with awe and fear. Zorak's eyes narrowed as he studied the mysterious ship. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Its size alone was enough to make even the most advanced warships look small, but it was the energy radiating from it that truly made it stand out. It wasn't just a vessel. It was something ancient, something beyond their understanding. "I don't know," Zorak admitted, his voice tight. "But it's been here, guarding something. Something dangerous. The enemy, whatever it is, has been kept locked away for centuries. Now we're finally close enough to uncover the truth." The crew stood silently as they approached the Alpha-class ship. The ship's sensors began to pick up unusual readings, massive energy fluctuations, strange gravitational anomalies, and electromagnetic disturbances. It was as if the very fabric of space was being warped around the ship. "We're getting closer," Zorak said, his gaze fixed on the ship ahead. "Stay focused. Whatever's inside that ship, we need to be ready for it." As they drew nearer, the ship's external lights flickered on, casting a faint glow across the cold, black void of space. The symbols on its surface grew brighter, and a strange hum filled the air. The warship seemed to react to their presence, as if it could sense their approach. "Commander, we're being pulled toward it," Kira reported, her voice growing more urgent. "The gravitational pull around the ship is getting stronger. It's as if it's trying to draw us in." "Prepare for impact," Zorak ordered quickly. "All systems at full power. We need to break free of its pull." But it was too late. The Alpha-class warship was now pulling them in with a force that they couldn't escape. The ship groaned as its engines fought against the immense gravitational force. The crew could feel the ship lurching, as though it was being torn apart by the intense pull. "Shields are holding, but just barely," Kira said, her hands flying over the controls. "We're losing stability. We won't be able to hold out much longer." Zorak gritted his teeth. They couldn't let the ship be dragged into the heart of the Alpha-class vessel. There was no telling what kind of danger awaited them inside. But just as he was about to order an emergency retreat, the ship suddenly stopped pulling them in. The humming sound that had been growing louder died down, and the gravitational pull eased. The warship came to a halt, floating in place. It was as if something, or someone, had decided to give them a chance to enter. But why? Did you feel that?" Lieutenant Kira whispered, her voice trembling. "The ship, it stopped." Zorak nodded slowly. "It's giving us an opportunity to board." The crew was silent, each of them wondering the same thing. Why now? Why had the ship stopped just when they thought they were doomed? "Get us on board," Zorak commanded. "Prepare for a boarding operation. We need to find out what's inside." The team quickly suited up in their tactical gear, weapons ready. They couldn't afford to be caught off guard. As they moved toward the docking bay, the atmosphere inside the ship grew heavier. The lights flickered once more, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy. The strange hum filled the air again, but this time it was quieter, almost like a heartbeat. "Stay alert," Zorak warned, his voice firm. "Whatever we find inside, we need to be cautious. We don't know if the enemy has already awoken." The airlock doors opened, and the team stepped onto the massive, darkened hull of the Alpha-class warship. The air was thick, and the space was vast, much larger than anything they had seen before. The walls were smooth, made of a black, metallic material that shimmered in the low light. The floors were cold, and the silence was overwhelming. Zorak led the way, his senses on high alert. He could feel the weight of the place pressing down on him. Every step echoed in the vast emptiness, as if they were being watched. The deeper they went into the ship, the more unsettling it became. There were no signs of life, no crew, only the hum of the ship's energy systems and the occasional flicker of lights overhead. "This place, it's like a tomb," Lieutenant Kira said quietly, her voice barely audible in the stillness. Zorak nodded, his eyes scanning the surroundings. It felt wrong, too quiet, too empty. Something was off. And then they found it. At the far end of the hallway, a massive door loomed. It was unlike any door they had ever seen. The surface was covered in the same glowing symbols that had adorned the ship's exterior. The door seemed to pulse with energy, almost alive. "This is it," Zorak said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping up his spine. "This is where the enemy is being kept." He approached the door cautiously, his hand resting on the cold surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the symbols on the door began to glow brighter, and the humming sound grew louder. The door slowly began to open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. Inside, the team found what they had been searching for. At the center of the chamber, a massive containment unit stood, surrounded by energy shields. Inside the unit, something moved, a shadowy figure, barely visible, but unmistakably there. It was alive. Zorak's breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was the enemy. But as the containment unit began to glow brighter, a voice echoed in Zorak's mind. A voice that was not his own, but something ancient and powerful. "You have awakened me. Now you must face the consequences." The ground beneath their feet trembled as the dark figure inside the containment unit began to stir. The enemy was awake, and it was angry.